happy All right, happy Wednesday to you all. Welcome to the Salt City Hoops live postcast. Happy to be here chatting Jazz victory after five straight losses. We have a win against the shorthanded Los Angeles Clippers. Almost had to change the graphic on the screen here because I write the score on the graphic and get it all set up during garbage time. We're running out the clock, and the Jazz almost committed a 5-second violation. They turned the ball over, and I almost had to change the Clipper score. But it doesn't matter because those last 2 points wouldn't have mattered. The Jazz get a nice little comfortable victory today. It was a competitive game throughout. The 13-point victory does not entirely show how competitive the match was with the Clippers. But it was getting back in the win column for the Jazz, which was absolutely needed for this team. And to emphasize how absolutely critical the team thought that this win was, Will Hardy deploys a very playoff style rotation in the second half. Only 7 players played for the Jazz in the second half. We didn't see any Nickeil Alexander-Walker. We didn't see any Talen Horton-Tucker the entire game. But he obviously didn't see any second half minutes. We didn't see any Simone Fontecchio who got first half minutes. It was a very interesting approach to desperately trying to win this game against a Clippers team that was shorthanded. No Kawhi Leonard, no Luke Kennard, no Paul George. I don't know why I mentioned Luke Kennard before Paul George, but still players that were missing. I think they had a couple other contributors who were out as well, but you're looking at a limited Clippers lineup. But of course, the Clippers' strength in how they're able to kind of hang around these regular season wins without Kawhi Leonard and Paul George is that they keep throwing guys at you, right? You get Robert Covington and Nick Batum off the bench to provide stability and normalcy at the wing position, which is the most difficult position to fill in basketball, and especially against a Utah team that doesn't have a lot of those 6'7", 6'6", 6'8" guys to really match up against those kind of players. And Ty Lue is going to be pretty good at figuring out ways to maximize that depth and put players in the right position to succeed. Also, the Clippers are uniquely positioned. Maybe not unique is maybe too strong, but with Reggie Jackson and John Wall, they have 2 guys who are definitely positioned to exploit the things that the Jazz are good at. That the Jazz are poor at defensively, which is just a constant barrage of attacks and dribble moves towards the rim or getting defenders off balance to set up teammates for 3. You know, the Clippers are a pretty decent 3-point shooting team, even without those 3 guys that I mentioned. But that is a Clippers team that can absolutely exploit the Jazz, and they certainly did. We saw a lot of John Wall barrages to the rim. John Wall had over 20 points today. I think he was at 25 points for the day. Of course, I closed the tab that had my box score stats and my summary stats, so of course I got to open that up and actually give you accurate statistics of what happened today as you sit here and listen to me ramble on to figure this one out. But it was another critical moment for the Jazz, besides just the second half rotation, was also Jordan Clarkson's minutes specifically. And a lot of attention is being pointed to that, hey, Clarkson picked up his 4th foul at about 4 minutes and change into the third quarter. And he also got banged up on the play where he, quote unquote, committed that 4th foul. He kind of got elbowed in the side and kneed in the hamstring, and he was kind of walking it off. And a lot of talk is being made about how Will Hardy kept him in with 4 fouls in the third quarter, and that's usually a juncture, especially with the Jazz backcourt depth that they ostensibly have. And maybe you sit him for a little bit, bring in Malik Beasley to just kind of close off those minutes a little bit in the third quarter and bring in Clarkson later. But I think more unusual and very cool was Jordan Clarkson played the entire second half, aside for a minute of garbage time at the end. The entire second half. It wasn't just closing out the third quarter, closing out a few more minutes in the third quarter with 4 fouls. He played 23 minutes in the second half. Straight. No rest on that. And he continued to bring it offensively. He continued to be completely adequate defensively. With those 4 fouls, he ended up guarding John Wall drives a few times. He got beat a few times on those, but he also had one possession where he played straight up defense on John Wall with about 3 or 4 minutes left in the third quarter with 4 fouls, and he contested him well enough to kind of allow John Wall to put his blinders on, and I think we had a nice contest over from Kelly Olynyk to force the miss. But it was set up by very good perimeter defense by Jordan Clarkson on John Wall, who had been parading to the rim all game. And to clarify, John Wall finishes 26 points, 5 assists, 7 of 9 from the field, 0 of 5 from 3. There was a stretch where Colin Sexton was going over a ton of John Wall screens, and it was driving me fucking nuts because you want John Wall to shoot threes. But he ends up 12 of 13 from the free throw line, just continually barraging to the rim. So while John Wall finishes only 7 of 19 from the field, with those 12 of 13 from the free throw line, I bet that's a pretty nice effective field goal percentage at the end of the day for John Wall. 26 minutes in under, or 26 points in under 26 minutes. And Jordan Clarkson was completely adequate defending those actions. When he did pick up his fifth foul, which wasn't until the fourth quarter, the Jazz did a nice job making sure that he was always guarding a player in the corner like Robert Covington, who, and Ty Lue is smart. He's going to want to put the guys who are the weak defenders in the actions. But if you have limited offensive players out there like Robert Covington that just does not have the juice to dribble a basketball anymore, then yeah, that's suddenly a guy you can now hide Jordan Clarkson on. And no, you don't feel comfortable, putting Robert Covington, giving him the ball in his hands to force a switch with Jordan Clarkson, or, putting Robert Covington up at the level of the screen to force a switch with Jordan Clarkson. You're going to want to keep Robert Covington in the corner or on the wing and not really ask him to do too much. So I think it was very nice that the Jazz kept Jordan Clarkson out of harm's way, but he didn't reduce his intensity. He was going for rebounds. He had a nice offensive. He had tons of good offensive maneuvers where he was getting to the basket, and his style of aggression can give you an offensive foul here or there. So very nice offensive performance from Jordan Clarkson today, especially in the second half, playing a shitload of minutes. Efficient day for him. Loved watching him play today. And he definitely was the Jazz best player today at plus-minus of 19. He shares that plus-minus of 19 with Colin Sexton and Kelly Olynyk. Shared a lot of minutes with those guys. I don't think it's a coincidence that those guys have identical, very positive plus-minuses on the day. Probably the number 2 player's got to go to Lauri Markkanen today. Quiet day from him, but it was again nice Lauri Markkanen first half where he really had it going. In the first half, his 3-pointer has completely come around. One thing I want to take a look at is how his 3-point shooting has been over the past month compared to the start of the season, because now he is a bona fide super threat from deep now, and he is just on fire from there. And yeah, just to confirm, 7-man rotation in the second half. Only Walker Kessler, who only got third quarter minutes, I believe, coming in for Jared Vanderbilt, and Malik Beasley playing 9 minutes, getting the second half minutes. Otherwise, you're getting, this is all just second half minutes we're talking about here. 22 minutes from Jordan Clarkson, 20 minutes from Colin Sexton. So that's a 40-minute pace. 18 and almost 19 minutes for Kelly Olynyk. That would put him in a 38-minute pace. 18 and a half for Lauri Markkanen, and 15 minutes for Jared Vanderbilt, which is at a pace of 30 minutes would be definitely above his season average of about 26 minutes per game. So Will Hardy said, we are winning this game. This is the Clippers are shorthanded. We have the talent advantage. We're at home. The Clippers are on a horrible rest advantage. This is the second game of a road back-to-back for the Clippers. Or I think they played in LA last night, but still, this is on the road. This had to be a win. And you can definitely trust Malik Beasley in a lot of situations, but without Mike Conley, there was no trust in Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who is just atrocious in the first half, offensively and defensively. Had some nice plays. He contributes here once in a while. He'll get a steal here and there. But he missed a lot of shots today, and contributed some turnovers. That was a little frustrating. Did not enjoy Alexander Walker minutes today. He looks like he's shot 5 of 7, 1 and 2 from 3, but those 2 misses were pretty bad. His 3 was a very rushed shot that probably shouldn't have been taken. And Simone Fontecchio got 11 first half minutes. Didn't see him at all in the second half. Walker Kessler played a lot of minutes in the first half to match up with Ivica Zubac, and in the second half also got some of those Ivica Zubac matchup minutes just because you need Zubac had 29 rebounds on Saturday night, right? There has to be a body to match up with him. And Kessler, we all know from the first time that Kessler played Zubac, he got that nice block on Zubac and led to Thurl Bailey somehow exclaiming, "Take this sandwich," and reviewing the replay. So he also checked into the scorers table to go in the fourth quarter to see if he could match up against Zubac. Jazz had about a 12-point lead at this point. So Zubac comes in for the Clippers. I really thought Hardy was going to put in Kessler to match up with him. And then Hardy changes his mind. And so I got real terrified that the Jazz are a notoriously bad team giving up offensive rebounds. They're second worst in the league. They're one of the most historically awful rates at allowing offensive rebounds. And that's in no small part because Kelly Olynyk is a terrible rebounder. Lauri Markkanen is fine, but he's just a guy, right? He's just an 8 rebounds guy. He's just because he's kind of in that position. He's not. You're not looking at Markkanen and be like, yes, this is our strong rebounding presence. And Jared Vanderbilt, for all of his rebounding prowess at his position, he's not a box out and inhale rebounds kind of guy, right? We talk about a lot about Vanderbilt's rebounding skill and his tracking skills, but if you were to give Vanderbilt 35 minutes, how many times is he going to have like a 15 rebound night, right? He's not that kind of inhaler type rebounder. He's more of a let me give my team a second possession offensive rebound, chaos agent rebounder, where he's going to get a lot of solid 7, 8, 9 rebound games. And yeah, he's going to have 11, 12 rebounds on some of his greater nights. But I think we kind of take for granted what it means to have a Rudy Gobert night in, night out, 14, 15 rebounds, completely seal off second possessions. So looping it back around to Kessler actually not coming in. And the Jazz were fine on the glass going forward. I thought it was totally fine. Vanderbilt does end up with 12 rebounds today, 6 of them offensive. That's a skill, the offensive rebounds as a chaos agent. So I was surprised to see Kessler not actually go back into the scores table, go back into the game, but it is what it is. So we get the win. The Clippers deployed a lot of interesting guys that I think some of us were learning about for the first time. Moussa Diabate, I knew he was on the Clippers, but I was surprised to see him getting some minutes today. And he had 6 offensive rebounds. He was kind of a terror on the glass. He was playing a lot of minutes without Walker Kessler on the floor, causing some problems there. I always like watching Terrence Mann play, but he's been pretty good in his role against other teams, and for all of his now, everyone knows about how he crushed the Jazz last time. He's kind of struggled against the Jazz in these lineups where he's asked to do a little bit more, and he finished up a minus 23 on the night. The team has to rely on Marcus Morris to do more in these nights, and he just didn't have it today. Zubats was great, and Zubats got a lot of great opportunities to beat the Jazz. He was sealing guys down low, and it felt very past years of Rudy Gobert frustration, right? Where I was watching Zubats get in great position and not get the ball from a Reggie Jackson or a Marcus Morris or any of the ball handlers. John Wall basically completely froze him out for a lot of it. But I thought Zubats was probably their best player today. As outside of John Wall, who is just crushing the Jazz. And I don't think he got utilized enough. Reggie Jackson was fine, did what he does, 15 points, 2 of 6 from 3. Had one really nice step back 3 over Lauri Markkanen. That was basically just a lucky shot. And the Jazz just did not get killed by all the other guys. The Clippers ended up shooting 10 of 30 from 3. That's a totally adequate number of threes to allow the other team to take, and a completely adequate percentage that went in. I know that shooting percentage can be pretty fluky from game to game, but I do think that they were forcing the ball in the right hands, and forcing John Wall to take 10 threes is a big part of it. So listeners of this here program know that I've been pretty sick over the past week and a half. I'm finally drinking a beer for the first time in a couple weeks. This one comes to you from Oliphant Brewing. They're in Wisconsin. This is called the Blizzard of 91. I imagine up in Wisconsin you get some lake effect snow. I'm from Western New York. I know all about it. I know all about those blizzards. And this is a pecan pumpkin pie brown ale. Just a little 5%. I got to warm myself back up into this, and it's quite. I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. It's tasty. It doesn't have that punchy flavor that I really like out of my pumpkin ales, but this is drinkable. I got 4 of these. I'm gonna enjoy them. Maybe not all 4 tonight, but we're having a good time with it. And let me think about some of the other problems that we usually like to face with the Utah Jazz. Turnover percentage still bad, right? 17.5 turnover rate. And what was the total number of turnovers here? 17 turnovers. The ball really got real bad in the second quarter. The Jazz got out to a double-digit lead, squandered it it was such a slow squander because the Clippers weren't totally capitalizing immediately with getting threes up and catching up to the Jazz, but the Jazz just kept turning the ball over, and so the Clippers were able to slowly and slowly get back into it and ended up taking a lead in the second quarter. It was pretty miserable. Colin Sexton with 6 turnovers, but I think a lot of Sexton's turnovers, I'm going to have to look back at the tape, but I'm not looking at those 6 turnovers and being like that was a problem. Sexton had a great high-energy game, probably his highest energy game of even for Colin Sexton. And I think we just really appreciate the energy he gives, and I think he translated that into some actual winning plays today. He had a dunk that I think a lot of players would have tried to lay in an attempted dunk on a fast break, and by going for the dunk instead of the layup, I think he drew the free throws on a closing Robert Covington from behind. There was one hilarious play that I'm sure we all remember where the Jazz score and everyone retreats back to the defensive end, and the ball gets rolled in slowly, and as the ball is getting rolled in and the clock's not ticking, Reggie Jackson and Ivica Zubac, or I think it was Robert Covington, I'm sorry, they decided to have a conversation about what happened, and there was a lot of bickering with the Clippers today. And they were having a conversation while the ball is rolling down the court about, what went wrong. It wasn't clear what they were talking about, but it was a little snickering conversation. They're not watching. The ball is just kind of like rolling between them, and Colin Sexton just decides, I'm going to go get that ball. So he screams in from 25, 30 feet away and immediately just puts on 100% turbojets. And by the time the Clippers 2 players there recognized that he was there, it was too late for them to go retrieve the ball. So instead they elevator doors shut his path to the ball, and that ended up being a loose ball foul because you can't just impede the progress of the defender like that. And ended up being a turnover, Utah ball. So that was a great Sexton play. The dude is young, and that type of energy and fervor, that actually, I do believe, is a talent. I don't think that players are really born with that kind of a thing. And at 23 years old, on a reasonable contract, you can coach this guy into a thing, right? I don't really see all-star on his level of play, but I really do see the fringy starter 6-man type where it's like, you definitely want that guy on your team, right? And maybe he doesn't start, but you would totally be comfortable with him closing closing a game against certain lineups in the playoffs, right? It's less about starting and not so much about consistent game to game. It's more about, is this a guy that you want on a playoff team at all, like playing 20 to 30 minutes? And at his contract value. And right now, sign me all the way up for everything that Sexton is giving you, for his potential on his contract. And I'm willing to take the shitty games that he's had recently and saying you're only going to play 15 minutes because of the struggles you've had. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the negative you're getting and for the potential you're getting. I'm kind of surprised to see 6 turnovers next to his name. I remember a couple of them, but I certainly don't remember 6 of them. And I remember, I don't know, Kelly Olynyk's turnovers are more memorable to me because of the way he coughs the ball up sometimes, or, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And I think the last guy I just want to highlight is Malik Beasley, only 19 minutes today, 1 of 9 from the field, 1 of 7 from 3. Don't care. 1 of 7 from 3, that's not Malik Beasley. And when he's in the game, I pretty much want him to shoot a 3 every 2 minutes he's on the court. Right? I want him jacking up threes after threes, finding relocation. He was open for so many of those threes. There were a couple of them in and out that were just very unusual misses. Do not care that he's like that. He had 3 assists and a steal too. He has a little bit more verve on the ball than before. And with Conley out and with the trust that we don't have in Nickeil Alexander-Walker at this point, I don't mind having the ball in Malik Beasley's hand, and sign me all the way up for the minutes that he's going to give you, even if he absolutely does not provide any pressure on the rim. Talen Horton-Tucker's had a rough few games, and I think this is just similar to how Udoka Azubuike got 9 minutes the other night over Walker Kessler. I think this was just Will Hardy saying, look, you're definitely a tier better than Nickeil Alexander-Walker, but in a situation like this where we don't have Mike Conley, it's time to give Alexander Walker some extended run, 15 minutes, is to see if he can be a secondary ball handler playing alongside a Sexton or a Clarkson. I don't know. I don't really give a shit between the two of them. Obviously, Horton Tucker is a contract worth keeping around more than Alexander Walker, but we'll kind of see the season, how it progresses. Obviously, I think THT is still a tier ahead for me. So, that was that. Friend of the program, Andrew Streeter, is on, and I would love to have you comment on what we have and what you saw today. So you're live, brother.
How you doing?
Doing great. Great to be back online after being sick for a while. I finally got a beer, and I'm happy with a win. And we got some home games to get some more wins here. Because I'm seeing a 7, 8, 9, 10 seed. I want to see a playing game. I want to see a home playing game.
I've been saying, even when they were 10-3, that if they, because it's still, just a brutal start to the season schedule-wise, right? Like, it's a gauntlet. If I was saying if they could make it to New Year's, or a month out, it's pretty smooth sailing relatively the rest of the way. And so, we'll see if they can keep weathering the storm. It looked like tonight that the zone seems to be working, at least, better than it has been. It looks like they're committed to it. That was something that I noticed. I was just reading something that Will Hardy was saying after the game. He told Clark, said, he's like, I don't want to hear you're tired. He said, I can't say publicly what I said to him, but I was like the equivalent of, I don't want to hear you're tired. I want you better freaking take timeouts seriously in the second half because you're not coming out. And apparently Sexton asked to be subbed in the fourth, and he got rejected. He was like, no way, dude, you're not coming out. And I wonder if that's a combination of things. I wonder if just Hardy was like, screw this, we've got to win this game, or if that can't be conditioning stuff, right? I don't know what the urgency. I don't know. I don't know what the reason for the intensity was with his words there. But I thought that was a really interesting nugget.
Yeah, and thank you also to Ken Clayton on YouTube who also dropped that in the box, and I wanted to get to the comments as well. I think that's it's a really fun relationship dynamic, but exactly what you're saying there at the end, I'm more curious about why, right? This is a random game in November, right? It's still November. And we're telling that one of our best players on a Wednesday game, I'm reading this as, I don't trust my team enough so that my best point guard, who is Jordan Clarkson, he needs to be playing. I need him setting up the offense. It's interesting to me that is the decision you went, instead of saying, hey, I'm okay giving Nickeil Alexander-Walker just 4 minutes at the end of the third quarter with your 4 fouls. That wasn't his decision. It was, no, you are going to be playing point guard the rest of the way. Obviously, Sexton is going to get a lot of ball handling opportunities and play point guard and run the offense as well, but it's going to be Jordan Clarkson's offense to run this entire second half. And I think that's just an interesting approach, and I'm curious as to why. And I think it also bridges into one of our other comments from Bebop, where he says, what were your thoughts on Lowry having so few shot attempts in the second half? I think it also speaks to my criticisms of Lauri Markkanen, which is, I like Markkanen as a fringy all-star guy. I love the story, but you're just not seeing a guy who, okay, if he's got Robert Covington on him or Marcus Morris on him, that you're going to say, hey, Lauri Markkanen, can you run a pick and roll with another big or with Vanderbilt, or can you initiate some sort of offense where you're trusting Lauri Markkanen to actually handle the ball? No, the ball had to be in Jordan Clarkson's hands as much as possible in the second half, and to desperately get this win. And this is the other part of the why is it about trusting other ball handlers, or was it that much desperation to stop the skid and bring back what has been this team's best basketball skill, which is good vibes? And if this team starts getting sad and shitty and down, is this team going to start losing and losing and losing? And so Will Hardy said, no, we have to go home. We have no game tomorrow. We're not playing until Friday. We need to get the good vibes back however possible, and that's going to require Jordan Clarkson playing 24 minutes. So I think the quote is funny. It's cool. It expresses the relationship. I would have loved to see a follow-up question as to say, but like, why, right?
I think it's, if it wasn't painfully obvious before Conley's injury, the Jazz don't have a backup point guard. No one has a natural backup point guard, and certainly don't have anybody that, I don't know. They clearly have to draft one. That has to be priority number one.
Well, let's not Trey Burke the situation, right? Where we said like that was our one hole, and we end up drafting a player for need instead of for talent, and we end up with Trey Burke. So I get annoyed at and treating basketball drafts like football drafts, where it's like, okay, you can plug some holes by just drafting a player in that position. You should draft for talent. Of course, then you get Dennis Lindsey drafting Udoka Azubuike for no reason as the third center. But it's not that Sexton and Clarkson.
Reminder,
Yeah.
friendly reminder. The Jazz drafted Doak over Desmond Bane.
I do not need to relitigate the Doak over Bane. It's more about Doak at all, right? Like drafting that third center and that salary spot. It's I don't care who it's over. Like we can relitigate over whom all we want to, but it's more about drafting him at all. By the way, after he played 9 minutes, did not play at all today in normal time. But to your point about no backup point guard, it's obviously we know Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton, and to a lesser extent Taylor Horton-Tucker can kind of set up the offense and be a ball handler. But what Conley is really good at doing is setting up the Jazz best player, which is Lauri Markkanen, right? And because Lauri Markkanen is a dependent threat, and because Sexton and Clarkson are more, I think it's a trope to say that they're score first, but I don't think that's an unfair assessment of their skills to say that they're score first ball handling point guards. You then extrapolate from that, say Mike Conley is a guy who's going to help Lauri Markkanen get to those 25, 30 points and put Lauri Markkanen in position to get his defenders downhill and away from him and get Markkanen in a best position to put a whole bunch of points on the board. Clarkson's got a lot better at that. Like, we know Clarkson's averaging 5 assists a game. Sexton's starting to figure out his distribution game and setting up Markkanen way more the past couple games. And I don't think they're bad distributors, but if you're going to get Lauri Markkanen to be the star of this team, it needs to be a Conley-focused offense. And we have some pretty decent ball handlers behind him, but it's all a collection of good basketball playing talent. And I'm not sure a Chris Duhon type or a Luke Ridnour type is what the Jazz need if Conley's not here, but I do think that it would help Lauri Markkanen better as an individual player. I'm not sure it would lead into better winning basketball, right? To use a more modern example than Duhon or Luke Ridnour,
I was gonna go Jacques Vaughn,
but like Raul Neto, right? And I know people hated him, but Shelvin Mack, right? Like Shelvin Mack was a decent distributor who kind of just like ran basic shit offense. And we kind of got frustrated with Shelvin Mack when he decided to actually try to score from time to time. But those are the types of like crappy backup point guards that you could rely on to say, all right, just kind of set up what we have going on here. And I'd rather have Sexton and Clarkson put pressure on the rim, put pressure from deep, and commit 6 turnovers, 9 turnovers between the two of them. It's interesting, Andrew.
I happen to know of a 27-year-old point guard who is currently tearing it up overseas. Maybe you've heard of Dante Exum.
Well, one thing that we know about Dante Exum's skills, it certainly wasn't distribution and setting up teammates, and that became a source of issue with Exum.
It made me sad, man. I really wanted him to work out, really bad.
I certainly did as well. I think it was watching him for Team Australia will always be uplifting though, because he does provide them an interesting punch. And just to kind of give an idea of like where his pecking order is, he comes off the bench for Team Australia these days, so he's not the star that he was going to even pretend for that team. Who by the way, Team Australia makes it into the knockout round today of the World Cup, so that's pretty exciting. So going back to Lowry's shot attempts, just because I think it's a relevant question. You also have a situation where Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton just have complete garbage guarding them during the second half, and Lauri Markkanen, like the only existing good defenders left for the Clippers are going to be those wing defenders like Nick Batum, Marcus Morris. Robert Covington's lost a step, but he can certainly defend. So you end up and Lauri Markkanen, with how good he's been shooting from deep, he's completely taking a ton of pressure away from the paint to allow more paint drives. Especially when Zubats wasn't on the floor, which was quite frequently in the second half, that Ty Lue was willing to not play Zubats and then still give Diabate some more minutes, or he was playing small with Batum at the 5. And so Lauri Markkanen's presence actually helped, and it just goes to show his role. And with the Clarkson getting so many minutes and Hardy saying you're not coming out, is to say Markkanen is such an important offensive piece, and I think he's the Jazz's best player, but I keep overusing this phrase, but he's a dependent threat in the sense of, like, if he's got a good defender on him, you're not giving him the ball and trying to force a switch and saying, like, all right, try to get Reggie Jackson on you, try to get John Wall on you and make something happen. It's going to be, no, take your good defender, draw him away from the paint, and let our good ball handlers expose a John Wall who's lost a step, a Reggie Jackson who has a sore back and wasn't a good defender in the first place, or some of the younger guys like Amir Coffey or Brandon Boston, right? Those guys were kind of matching up on them, on the ball handlers from time to time, and you much rather have that. And I'm totally fine with the shot attempts for Lowry in general. The dude ends up with 23 points as it is, and like I said, he's firing it up from deep. I really love it. So I need another beer. Andrew, if you have another thought, love to hear it.
No, it's just, it was clearly Will Hardy felt this way, that it was really, really important to get this win. You can't take any win for granted. I don't care that the Clippers were shorthanded. The Jazz, clearly should have beaten the Pistons, and they still lost. They were in all of these other games. But like you were saying earlier, it's contagious, and their biggest asset is the vibe, is the good vibes, and that goes out the window if you lose 6 or more in a row. So it's nice. They got, I think, Indiana on Friday, and then they're back for some, I think, Portland after that.
Yeah, and I want to take this time to also remind people, the Jazz have had one blowout loss this year. They lost by 17 to the Nuggets, I think it was. Of course, the one game I go to, right? I live in Denver, and I go sit behind the bench for the Nuggets game, and they lose by 17 to the Nuggets, and they still made that game frisky in the second half, and including Will Hardy puts in the deep bench in the fourth quarter with like 8 minutes left to play, and like Micah Potter and Leandro Bolmaro and friends actually kind of made a quick little run to like pull it within 12 or 14 or something. Anyways, all 5 of these losses have been good fucking games, right? So I was, fluing it up in bed and kind of like keeling over and watching the team lose to the Suns, lose to the Warriors, and just trying to, everyone has like a Thanksgiving hangover or whatever, and I just had like a hangover without the alcohol. I was just kind of like drearily watching this games, but like they still excited me and they were playing well, and again, all without Mike Conley. We want to talk about like, oh, Mike Conley's so important to this team. We lost Mike Conley, we started losing. I'm not sure how much better the teams could have really played to get those wins. I mean, Mike Conley, I think, would have made the difference in maybe 3, 4, 5 of those wins. Definitely the Pistons loss, which really sucked. And I think I can't remember if he played for the Knicks loss, but that was also a very a disappointing game against the Knicks that lost. But this team is competitive. Like, this is not. You look at an 11-10 basket. They're 12-10 now. You think, oh, those 10 losses. There's probably going to be some real duds in there. There isn't a single dud from this team all season, and even the Nuggets game that is ostensibly a dud because it was a blowout loss, you're featuring shit like DeAndre Jordan 3-pointers, right? Like, what are you gonna do? You just can't fight against that a whole lot. So sometimes you just get the wrong, and it was on the second game of a back-to-back and what have you. And by the way, the Nuggets are really good. So you're not really going to care about that loss. Long term, this team just keeps on bringing it and instilling a good vibe. To like a 6-game losing streak, you're kind of looking at the calendar being like, when's the last time we got a walk-off interview with Holly Rowe, right? And like the players are looking around thinking this kind of sucks. And when you getting this win early in the homestand can kind of kick you over to Friday. You talk about the Pacers, right? Now we have that's guys, you got to get out your popcorn for this game on Friday. I've been looking forward to this Pacers Jazz game for about 2 weeks because the Pacers keep on bringing it. We saw them have the game-winning bucket from Aaron Nemhard against the Lakers on Monday night, I believe it was. Or maybe it was even last night. No, it was Monday night. That's right. Because after our postcast, we checked out the end of that one. The Pacers are great. Tyrese Halliburton is an all-star point guard today. You know, I think he's averaging almost 10 assists a game. Let me pull up.
Matherin is no joke. That kid is really good. I'm really excited to watch this game like you are in the same boat.
Yeah, for anyone listening, I'll summarize the Pacers for you. So, I'm trying to type in their basketball reference page, and I typed in Indiana Pacers Benedict Mathurin. Benedict Mathurin, for those who don't know, that is a rookie shooting guard. He's a ball-handling shooting guard. He's a score-first ball handler, and he is completely kicking ass. He is fourth on the team in minutes per game. He does not start for them, but he averages 19 points, 4 assists, only 2 turnovers in 28 minutes, which is really impressive. 44% from the field, but 42% from 3. And he gets to the line 6 times a game for a rookie, which is just it really shows some great talent. He, like Trae Young coming out of college, so Trae Young in college had already learned how to draw bullshit fouls, and he immediately brought that over to the NBA. Mathurin was a great scorer in college, but he didn't really have that like foul baiting drawing ability, and he's really shown it in the NBA. So he's a delight to watch. He's in control. He doesn't have Jordan Clarkson's silky kind of up and down, go, stop, like herky-jerky, if I may, style, but he does have the control that you see out of Jordan Clarkson. Like, he's got that ball on a string, head up, always kind of knows what he's doing. Miles Turner, after missing the first few games of the season, he has been absolute defensive player of the year. He's currently my vote for defensive player of the year. 18 points, 9 rebounds, 2.5 blocks a game, finally playing without Domantas Sabonis, and he looks joyful and happy to be playing basketball in Indiana, and they finally might have actually gotten use out of keeping him around instead of trading him. Buddy Hield, still awesome, second on the team in minutes, 3.5 threes a game. It's going to be a challenge, and here you go. Tyrese Halliburton averaging 11 assists a game, 2 steals a game, great defense, great offense. This team brings it. Outside of those 4 players, you end up with some more questionable talent, but you have 3 all-star level players, right? 2 all-star level players in Halliburton and Turner, and 2 obvious very top-line starters in Hield and Mathurin, who comes off the bench but is playing 28 minutes a game. We'll call him a starter. After that, it gets questionable, right? They're starting Jalen Smith, who's had a very shitty start to his career as a power forward center in Phoenix, coming out of the University of Maryland. But so he has good games, he has bad games. He kind of figured out how to play basketball last year and really came on. But he has good games and bad games when you're watching. He's kind of fun to watch. Andrew Nemhard is a good little backup guard playing for them, but he's just a 7-point guy. Aaron Nesmith, just a 7-point guy. Chris Duarte had a great rookie season as a 3-and-D wing guy, but he's kind of struggled this year and isn't as good as a defender as he was purported to be. And kind of go down with TJ McConnell. We know who he is. O'Shea Brissett, we know who he is just kind of a small forward, power forward type. And the last guy that I would like the Jazz fans to pay attention to is going to be Isaiah Jackson. Isaiah Jackson, the Pacers are very high on. He currently plays pure backup center to Miles Turner, but even when Turner was out, they didn't trust him to play a ton of minutes. But he will be playing about 15 minutes a game. He will play 15 minutes on Friday, and he is a fabulous rebounder. He's a tremendous shot blocker. He's great around. He has great touch around the rim, and I think he's going to pose a lot of problems for the poor rebounding Utah Jazz on Friday. This team was supposed to be bad because Haliburton wasn't supposed to be this good. Turner wasn't supposed to play this many games. Certainly Mathurin came out of nowhere. Buddy Hield wasn't supposed to be here anymore. Jalen Smith, we didn't know how good he was going to be. Said this team is 12-8. And they're doing the same things the Jazz are doing. They have great vibes. They love playing together. Their scoring is very distributed. 20 points Haliburton, 17 points Hield, 18 points Turner, 19 points Mathurin, 11 points Smith. There's no dominant player here except for Haliburton averaging 11 assists a game. Like, he is the real deal from a point guard perspective. And this will be a very, very fun watch on Friday. And yeah, I'm just kind of excited here a little bit. If you couldn't tell, Andrew.
Oh yeah. I was like, initially, I couldn't believe that the Kings traded away Haliburton. Clearly, they're not doing too bad themselves. So it's one of those great, worked out for both sides situations. It looks like, at least to this point.
Well, they're still struggling with the things that Sabonis struggles with. Sabonis is defending very poorly at the rim. Their benefit is that they're number 2 in the NBA in offense. I think they're actually number 1 in the NBA in offense right now. Top 1, 2, or 3. So
the big difference is that you like, you're kind of like what you're getting at there is that Sabonis kind of is who he is at this point. Like, who he is and what he's going to be, but Haliburton still has like a lot of upside. So I think that was still a crazy trade to me. Like, it super blew my mind that they sent him away.
Yeah, that was the thing. It's not that Sabonis is a bad player. It's more about the value prop for that and the money that Sabonis was making. I thought it was questionable as well. I thought the Pacers were... We don't know if this was on the table, but we talk about the Jazz, the trades that could have made, the trades that they didn't make or they have made. Obviously, the Jazz made their trades. But the Pacers are an interesting case study in not making the trades. And right now they have Miles Turner and Buddy Hield, who we don't know if this trade was on the table. But one thing Zach Lowe has said is that if I'm the Lakers, I would actually consider giving those 2 completely unprotected 2027 and 2029 draft picks for Buddy Hield and Miles Turner. He would seriously consider that if you're actually trying to reclaim this season. And we don't know if that offer was on the table. It doesn't sound like it actually was, but it sounds like that's what the Pacers might have been willing to accept if that was the trade that was offered from the Pacers' point of view. Instead, they kept those guys. And the Pacers have additional draft picks as well. And this goes back to what I was saying during the hot start for the Jazz. It's okay to be accidentally good. Right? Because even with Hield and Turner, like, this is a Pacers team that you're looking at being like, all right, this is a cute 33-32 win team. This team is going nowhere. But by being accidentally over 500, and if the Pacers finish in the play-in situation, that's not markedly different than if you're 10th worst versus being 14th worst, as lottery odds go, or what have you. And if Tyrese Haliburton is this good, there's 2 parts to this Haliburton development circle. One is he's a young dude who clearly has a talent for distributing the basketball, scoring the basketball, playing great defense. You really stunt his development by surrounding him with garbage, right? So if you don't get the spacing from Hield, if you don't get the backline protection from Turner and the general pick and roll threat that you have with Turner, both from a pick and pop and rolling to the rim perspective from Miles Turner, if you're not getting those and you're ending up just kind of running, I've talked about how much I like Isaiah Jackson, but that dude is super, super raw. Goga Batadze, who would be their other center, is also kind of bad, but promising, interesting, but bad. Jalen Smith, I've talked about how he's been very up and down. Like, what are you doing to Haliburton's development in that case? I think you could struggle from that perspective. I think I forgot what my second point was, but I'm okay with being accidentally good. The only issue you run into in the NBA that we've seen from Detroit, we've seen from Charlotte, we've seen from a lot of these Eastern Conference weird teams, the Orlando Magic from time to time, is when you are intentionally mediocre. If you say we're going to pay a lot of money for bad players just so we can win 40 games, and because that's what ownership wants, That's the problem, because then you end up with intentionally mediocre with no way to improve year after year after year after year. If you're accidentally good and you don't have a deficit of draft capital, if your salary cap looks really clean and you can make a lot of maneuvers such as taking on a bad salary and getting draft picks, or trading away some of your bad players for slightly better players because you have the cap flexibility to do so, and you might be able to steal some interesting talent from teams that are more strapped for cash. That's okay, right? And there are obvious bad teams in the NBA. Like the Houston Rockets are still very bad. The Oklahoma City Thunder is, Alexander Walker. I'm sorry, his cousin Shai Gilgeous-Alexander heroics aside, is going to be a bad team. The Spurs were a nice, fun team. They were winning a bunch of games early on. They're going to be a bad team. It's really hard to get to their level. So why not kind of mull about in the 6th worst to 12th worst range, and maybe you end up having some good vibes and finding some talent that you didn't expect before. After this losing streak, there hasn't been a lot of talk about the accidentally good Jazz, but that I was harping on earlier on in the season. But I still insist that it is okay to be accidentally good, because it isn't that much different than, as far as lottery odds are concerned, than if you're kind of bad and you end up winning 30 games versus 38 games. It really just doesn't matter. You can point to the lottery odds all you want to, but they're just not that much different, especially now that they're flattened out. So, exciting, fun win for the Jazz. We've been on for about an hour here. Trying to think if there's any other points about today that I missed, Andrew. Since you're here and being a friend of the program, I'm bouncing thoughts off of you as we sit here. I'm looking at the cleaning the glass stats today. Nothing really jumps out except for the usually bad turnover percentage. The offensive rebounding that we gave up was not entirely too bad. Although, no, it was, yeah. The Clippers, looks like they rebounded 40% of their misses, which is just absolutely absurd. That is extremely bad. Yeah, looking at the box score, they had all periods, 17 offensive rebounds for the Clippers today, which is just another bugaboo for the Jazz. Luckily, the Jazz didn't totally get punted on the possession game, because they rebounded 37% of their own misses. The Jazz had 13 offensive rebounds of their own, powered by Colin Sexton and Jared Vanderbilt, getting 9 of those. So you just can't give up 40%. 40% of the Clippers' misses were led to second chance.
It's the turnovers, and not just just live ball, stupid, ridiculous mistakes, careless mistakes that result in turnovers, and that's usually. That's obviously when they start losing their lead.
If you're giving up 17 turnovers and giving up 17 offensive rebounds, I don't know how many games you're winning. Maybe 7. So I think the Jazz got lucky that the Clippers, the lineups that they were putting out there were not a great shooting team. Clippers had an effective field goal percentage today of 45%, which is just absolutely miserable. The Clippers could not get the ball at the rim at all. The Clippers shot 38% around the rim, which is, for a Jazz team that doesn't really have any rim protection at all, was really impressive. Although we did see an uptick of Walker Kessler minutes today that I think certainly helped with that percentage to guard around the rim today. So, but the Clippers only shot a quarter of their shots at the rim, right? They were mainly in the short mid-range game, the mid-range, and they shot pretty well from the mid-range. We saw Reggie Jackson getting to his spots. We saw Marcus Morris getting a few mid-range shots today. So we kind of just played the math game with scoring, right? We're not allowing them to shoot at the rim, and when they were shooting at the rim, they were shooting a poor percentage, and we were forcing them off of 3. The Clippers only shot 30% of their shots from 3, which is, pretty, like I said, 10 to 30 from 3. That's a healthy amount of attempts to give up, and that's a healthy amount of percentage to give up. So forced him in the mid-range and got the win, despite giving up 40% misses. And I'm going to blame Kelly Olynyk for all of that.
I swear, I did not know when we were talking about the Kings and the Pacers that they were playing currently. It's the huge slate of NBA games tonight. I think they were like 13 games or something. Anyway, the Pacers are about to lose by 30 to the Kings late in the fourth. So, bit of a wounded animal situation. Jazz are rolling over to.
Yeah, and it doesn't unless we get another Pacers comeback story. It looks like the Lakers are going to beat the Blazers at home, so the Lakers are still trudging along and trying to make something of their season. But that's the NBA, and we're going to face the Pacers on Friday. They're going to be motivated after a big loss today. Pacers giving up 136 and change to the Kings. Kings are powered by, it looks like, a very quite balanced scoring attack led by Harrison Barnes, surprisingly enough. This Pacers matchup will be a little interesting. So I think that'll conclude our evening. Mr. Streeter, thank you for being a little bit of a co-host today. Love having your questions and have you on the show. And anybody else, just as a before we super sign off, if you're in and want to drop a note or a comment, happy to have you. I'm going to take a couple sips of beer to give anyone a chance to drop a comment or a question on YouTube or the spaces. And other than that, we'll catch you. I won't be on Friday night for an obligation, but you'll definitely see me Saturday night for the back-to-back. So take a sip of beer here, give everyone a chance to say goodbye or say hello.
Good night and good luck.
Yeah, thank you, friends. We'll see you Saturday night, but we'll enjoy the Friday night game, on Twitter as we always do. All right, good night, friends. Thank you for joining the Salt City Hoops live postcast and beer, celebrating another Jazz win. Go Jazz, and we'll see you next time.